You are tuning in to the very first episode of Hippie by Accident. I'm your host, Roderick Thomas, and I don't sweep anything under the rug. We discuss all things culture, all things culture. All right, listen up. All right, so the topic of this episode is
Black men's sexuality and patriarchy.
Now, I have a lot of thoughts on this, so we're just going to jump right in. So, when it comes to black sexuality, when I think about it, I think of so many beautiful images of like beautiful black people, right? I think of beautiful black bodies, our shapes, our features. And so black people are so diverse and aesthetically, I think just so beautiful. And I just think of color and energy and earth. I mean, if you've ever been in a crowd or like at any event where there's a bunch of black people and you just stop and look around, like, I'm just in awe. But there's certain ways that black people's sexuality gets policed from within our community, and then how patriarchy also shows up in our community that I think puts black people at a disadvantage when it comes to expressing our individual sexualities. And sometimes it's even life-threatening. Now, a little bit later on in the show, we're going to talk about the Andrew Gillum scandal as it relates to black male sexuality. Andrew Gillum is the former Tallahassee, Florida mayor who was found in a hotel room heavily intoxicated with a male escort. So we're going to get into that a little bit later. There's a lot of discussion to be had there. Now, if you ask black men and black women about what they look for in a partner, you'll hear some recurring themes. Now, this is in my experience. I don't mean to generalize, but in my experience, there are some recurring themes, right? So, for example, it's not uncommon to hear black women talk about chocolate, like how they want a chocolate man, or at least praise or show attraction to a brown-skinned, dark-skinned black man, right? In the community, black men do the same. There's a certain shape, small waist, thick, slim, thick, whatever. And these preferences are, informed by culture, right? And sometimes they're problematic, especially, when you get into the realm of like colorism and all that. Okay, so in this episode, I'm going to break down some characteristics of manhood and black manhood into two profiles. And a lot of us, we're familiar with these characteristics. Most of us know what these things are. So,
Profile number one.
A real man is a provider. He's not soft.
Never.
He brings home the bacon. He's strong, physically, mentally. He's aggressive. He's big. He's tough, sexually dominant, and promiscuous. He is unwavering, right? We know this. This is what we've been told our whole lives. And so intrinsically or conceptually, these traits aren't necessarily negative, but in practice, it's not panning out so well for black men and women across the board. You see, if a black man achieves those things, if he has those characteristics, like if those things are 80% of his character, he will receive societal rewards. He'll be wanted, he'll be admired, he'll be sexually desirable, he'll be a real man. Even if he's void of other qualities and characteristics like sensitivity, emotional intelligence, those kind of qualities, he'll still be considered a real man or, a real ass nigga, right? Now, society has rewards for women as well who play their role. See, if a black woman acts a certain way, which is pretty much, the opposite of the manhood profile, then she'll be picked. She'll be chose. She'll have safety. She'll be protected. As long as she's soft, gentle, quieter, available, agreeable, smaller, supportive, sexually codependent, and strong, but not too strong. You see, we're very familiar with these roles. They're traditional. We know them. They're also very rigid. And what I find is that it doesn't really matter which community you belong into. Everybody is trying to fit themselves somehow or get a piece of these gold standards of what it means to be, a man or a woman in society. Some people fit right into these models. Some people just acquiesce just to, go along to get along. And some people fit too far outside of these models. And then you have a lot of folks who play the role when people are watching, right? But do what they want on the side. So recently, I was listening to a YouTuber, and I usually love her commentary. And she was responding to the Andrew Gillum scandal. Long story short, to summarize, Andrew Gillum is a former Tallahassee, Florida mayor. He's 40 years old, and he was almost Florida governor. He's this rising Democratic black politician. He's this handsome family man. Barack Obama, even endorsed him. He had this clean record, at least as far as the public is concerned, right? And then in mid-March 2020, he was found heavily intoxicated, unable to speak to police, in a hotel with a barely conscious gay male escort and at least one other man. Oh, and there was meth. Now, we don't know the full story. We weren't there, but the implications are pretty sharp, and they are that Andrew Gillum was having an extramarital affair. Yes, he is married to a woman. RJ Gillum is his wife. And that he's secretly gay or on the down low, or at the very least, he has some same-sex attractions. So as I'm watching this YouTuber talk about the Andrew Gillum story, she's making some good points, but then she lands on this, to me, half-baked conclusion, which was that queer men, bisexual, gay, etc., want to have their cake and eat it too, no pun intended, because they're choosing to sleep with these women just to have children, but still sleep with men on the side. And throughout the video, she's like,
ladies, I don't think there are any straight black men left. Are there any straight black men left? Are there any straight black men left?
And then women are calling in, and it's this whole thing. Everyone's like, where are all the men? Now, it's not that there are not any straight black men. There are plenty. At the core, the real issue is our allegiance to patriarchy and how it shows up in the black community. Society pretty much incentivizes you to not be yourself. And so black folks are really in a pressure cooker, because here's just one more area where you can't really show up as yourself, and you're going to get it from outside the community, but especially from inside the community as well, because black people, we put pressure on ourselves to achieve this standard of respectability that's rooted in a response to white supremacy, either trying to defy it or appease it, or both. And traditionally, when it comes to our religion, how we look down to our sexuality, it's been all about looking like the right type of person in this society, because we've been told for so long that we're not the right kind of person. So I keep watching, and this YouTuber goes on to say that since same-sex marriage is now legal, these men are free to be themselves, but they keep choosing to essentially rob women of their time and womb. Okay, so I was thinking about it, and hey, look, she's right. These men are choosing. But why are they choosing to be dishonest about their sexual desires? We know why. Okay, let's be real. There are serious penalties, consequences, especially in the black community, for that type of sexual disclosure, for that kind of honesty. I mean, losing the privileges of manhood to, your community and then the wider society, and then the additional safety risks and potentially loss of life. We're still very traditional. We're still very conservative outwardly. We like to think that millennials and Gen Z have eradicated homophobia, aka fear of losing patriarchal privilege, but that's not the case, not yet. Name one openly queer black male elected official in high office. Right. So Andrew Gillum, his family, his staff, all these people who are suffering because of his choices, yes, but also a culture that's okay with dishonesty around sexual identities, but don't let us find out. Also, just because you make something legal doesn't mean you make it socially acceptable. I mean, black people have fought for and won certain legal rights and had them for decades now, but look around, we're still fighting for our seat at the table. I mean, body cams, Black Lives Matter, these are all things that are implemented and movements because to be black is still not really all the way socially acceptable unless it can be consumed as a commercial product. Hip hop. The coolest things about social media culture, black women's looks, black women's fashion, or if you can catch a ball. Sports is probably the one area where being big and black is not a scary thing, right? Where being a big black guy isn't so bad. Or pornography. So the messaging that black men are getting through media, through our society in general, through our language is pretty clear. It's about your body, and that is where your value is going to come from, and what it can do sexually, what it can do physically on a field. None of this promotes self-awareness, which is key to sexual identity. This is the entire premise of Get Out. And I know some people are going to push back and say, well, white men get the same messaging too, and other races of men. And no, stop. Skirt. White men's bodies historically and now have not been commodified, while black men's bodies have. And the manhood profile for white men doesn't include this same emphasis on physicality. And this shows up in our movies, in our jokes, our entertainment. I mean, how many times have we heard a comedian say, well, I'm gonna get me a white man because, he got good credit? Or some stand-up joke about, a black man who had a big old dick, but he was broke. Or even movies like Throwback, White Man Can't Jump. These things aren't just here because they just appeared. For white men, a lot of how masculinity is defined is through access to money, wealth, without ever having to have their bodies be commodified. So white men's masculinity has never been, as a group, defined by how big their dick is or how well they play ball on a field. So I think that black men end up experiencing this weird amalgamation of like having or feeling like you have this perceived competitive physical advantage and expectation, while also being restricted, because that is how you are largely valued, what you can throw on a field and what you can do in a bedroom. Society's pretty much like, yeah, whatever, black man,
How good is your stroke aim, and can you catch this damn ball?
Patriarchy doesn't respect sexuality, it butchers it. And black people, black men in this case, are expected to have very rigid, vanilla sex lives, but in copious amounts, at the expense of black women and femininity and emotional intelligence. And there isn't really much backlash, especially coming from black men policing ourselves when it comes to how we treat black women. You see this with Waka Flocka and Tammy Rivera, him saying things like his cheating made her stronger. Or Boyce Watkins going in on Lizzo and her weight, even though he himself is fat. Or The Game and literally every woman on earth. Like, I just think we need new models, new standards, because the standards and profile for black sexuality and manhood haven't really expanded as much as they should or could, and haven't really changed that much. For example, if you're a black man and your sex life, as we know, is missionary, doggy, and getting head from many, many, many women, you're considered a player, a real man. And to be honest, in the black community, there's really only one widely accepted deviation from Profile 1, which is, at best, you get to be
A black king.
A good man.
Now, the Black King is somebody who transitions partially from total player to adopt characteristics that adhere more to black respectability. Now, these men can be in many different professions. They could be your pastor, your doctor, social justice advocate, your hotep, your woke Twitter/Instagram king. You know these men.
Profile 2.
He definitely went to an HBCU. He pledged some fraternity, He may have a beard, maybe. Wears a suit, goes to church from time to time. He's definitely got black art in his house or apartment. And he has a 9-to-5. And he may or may not be ready to walk down the aisle, but he's definitely eligible enough to put a ring on some lucky girl's finger. All the markers of successful adulthood. But remember, without completely divorcing himself from attributes and characteristics of Profile 1, right? So he could still get all the hoes.
And he's still strong as fuck and masculine as fuck.
Now, sometimes the Black King doesn't achieve his Black King status until he's a bit older. And so it's not uncommon to hear something like, man, back in my day, I used to be a player, but now at 48, I'm wiser and I'm trying to just put these youngers on game. I'm about building generational wealth and finding my black queen. It's like a Jay-Z verse Malcolm suit Hotep smoothie. And the problem is these profiles 1 and 2 get pushed to the top as the standards, and they can be achieved in the absence of facing oneself and qualities like emotional intelligence, emotional maturity, empathy, accountability, like other things. When you put these profiles as priority, and then there are social penalties, consequences for being honest about your sexuality, it really doesn't put black men in a good space to be open, right? Black men aren't told to be emotionally intelligent, let alone be honest about their sexual desires. Even if a heterosexual black man says he likes anything outside of oral, doggy, or missionary, you may just lose your status as a respectable brother, and now you're suspect. I mean, look what happened when Tank said he likes to get his groceries ate by his girl. His girl. Folks were in the comments like,
oh, he gay. He is gay. I mean, I cannot have my nigga spread, legs open wide, legs up. I just cannot.
Man, that nigga gay. Cut it out. Listen, people are doing a lot of freak shit behind closed doors that they're not really going to be honest with their friends or with you about in conversation. So who the hell are you pretending for, right? You're pretending for the next person who's pretending for the next person. Listen, that is exhausting. And I'm not trying to make something that's not a thing. I'm just trying to tell you that when people tell me about their sex lives, oh boy, it is far more nuanced than society would have you believe. Often. Oh yeah. And hear me clearly, okay? If Faith Evans, right, had the temerity, the gall to tongue down Biggie's cheeks, anything is possible. Seriously, a lot of black women are told to be in pursuit of their black king and see these attributes of profile 1 and 2 as attractive. And thus many black women do, and unfortunately, I think a lot of men, then amplify qualities that often aren't even true to their nature. Is this what Andrew Gillum was trying to amplify in himself? Is this what RJ Gillum was seeking in her man? Look at the reaction Dwayne Wade gets for supporting his child, Zaya for simply coming into their own. And there's a lot of vitriol and anger from our community about how he's allowing his child to define herself as a trans girl. What these profiles teach, right, when they lack emotional intelligence is not to be honest, right? It's low self-awareness and to not consider others. You do not have to wait till you're an uncle in the club before you start learning these necessary life tools. Like, you can learn this shit now. And I don't want to hear another person talk about generational wealth if you're not interested in attaining the wealth of character 1 for yourself, right? When you're not interested in passing down the wealth of wisdom to your children. Now, this is not me just going in, look, I come from a family like this, right? Many of my friends come from families that, like a lot of families, that adhered to these roles. And they really didn't serve, our mothers, our fathers. And so I think that if we want to progress, if we want to move forward, then the standards gotta shift, right? They gotta change, they gotta evolve. And this isn't about changing or breaking tradition for breaking tradition's sake. This is about doing what is better for you and community. Now, when it comes to sexuality, people often, say, sexuality is on a spectrum. And I often hear people use spectrum in from 1 to 10 terms. Like from 1 to 10, how gay or straight are you, right? However, I think of sexuality more like a map. Each street, each neighborhood, each area has its own vibe and aesthetic. And while many places are similar, they also have their distinct features. Sexuality is more than just from 1 to 10, how gay or straight are you, or just gay and straight. Let me ask you this. If a black woman only sleeps with and is only attracted to men, but loves gay porn, as in two men. What's her sexuality? Question. If a black man only sleeps with and is exclusively attracted to women, but loves being penetrated or dominated by cisgendered women, that means biological women, what's his sexuality? The truth is, people aren't encouraged to be honest about what their neighborhood, what their sexuality really looks like. Everyone is trying to live like, the Cosbys, and clearly that's not real. And, I know facing oneself, it's difficult. It's hard. I know so many people were disappointed with this scandal with Gillum. But I think the lesson in this is to stop putting so much emphasis on performance and to really show up as you are authentically. And for us in our community to really uplift those who are being their authentic selves. And specifically for black men, I think the question is, what does that look like in practice, practically? It could be not chastising other black men for their femininity. Right? It could be not praising unnecessarily aggressive behavior, being honest, with at least yourself first, about what it is you really like, and, living out that honesty, not at the expense of someone else. Therapy, and I don't mean therapy like just a scenic walk or going to the gym. No, if you have the means to invest in yourself as far as therapy, go see a therapist or have an accountability buddy. Whatever it takes. It can be hard, but it will benefit us in the long run. All right, y'all. Now, if you want to know more about the Andrew Gillum story, I wrote an article for the Red Hook Star Review. It's in the description box. Click the link. Thank you so much for listening. And don't forget to subscribe. You'll get a notification anytime I have new content up on this channel. Again, thank you guys for listening. I have all my social handles in the description box. Feel free to reach out to me. And please leave a comment. Let me know what you think about anything I talked about in this video. I want to know your opinion, your thoughts. I want to be really interactive with you guys, all right? Episode 2 coming soon. Let your girl go to Trader Joe's if she wants.